Y'all getting any rain out your way? 'Cause it's raining here. It's pretty nasty. Real humid. Hot. Wet. Sort of reminded me of Indonesia. Where I thought Indonesia would look like. And Indonesia reminded me of Phil Rivara. Because Phil Rivara's got a brother, I think, that lives in Indonesia. Housekeeping, first off. I'm the Night Piper, aka Swampmuscle, aka your friend. And I'm smoking Swampmuscle number 2, made by BJV Pipes. I will not leave his description in the bucket because I just told you what it is and you all know him. Look at the beautiful black rustication on the top. Look at the beautiful brown rustification on the bottom. Square shank and green seal. And in it, I am smoking a very unknown blend. So, why did I mention Phil Rivara? Well, Phil Rivara asked me one day where the name Swampmuscle came from. Now, I don't know how good of a storyteller I am. Matter of fact, I don't think I'm a very good storyteller at all. But there's a big lesson with Swampmuscle. What Swampmuscle means to me. And for those of you who don't know, that's my music name. It's a band of just me. Now, it's a very positive thing to me because Swampmuscle taught me a very important lesson. Or it was derived from a very important lesson that I learned in life. And I'll go to the first step in this lesson for me was we got in trouble in Tennessee and they sent me to Georgia. They sent me to Georgia so I wouldn't go to jail in Tennessee. We'll just have to do a Swampmuscle this way. Well, I go to a quote-unquote rehab center to clean up a little bit in my life. And in that rehab center, I met a guy who was an assistant coach at a major university, basketball. And we become friends because I love basketball. And play a lot of golf. He introduces me to family. We become good friends, whatever. He gets me tickets to games and stuff. This is great. I was like, man, this living better is really good. And at the same time, I decide that, you know what, since I got this new lease on life, I think I'll become a sports broadcaster so I can get into sporting events for free. I called my dad, like, Dad, I'm going to try to go to broadcasting school. He's like, all right. So I get in this school. Looks like the DeVry of broadcasting. I won't give the name of the school. When I start school there, then while I'm at school there, I make a friend. I'll just say his name's Carlton. And he's a pretty funny guy, and he does really good voice impersonations of people. And we decided we should do a show, sort of a comedy radio show, and call it Only in America and make fun of all the politicians and everybody. And so we work on that. We think it's pretty good. Well, while I'm in the broadcasting school, I tell my friend, the assistant basketball coach, that I'm in broadcasting school. And he says, well, why don't you call this guy and see if he'll help you out? Well, this guy, and I'm not going to give his name, was a major play-by-play guy at a big university. So I do what I was told, something I learned in rehab, and I call this guy, introduce myself. He's like, sure, I'll help you. Well, I'm like, wow, that's great. So I started interning with this university, and I start covering, coaching things and press conferences, and start going to games, and I keep doing it. And then I get to start doing some specials on the radio. So, I'm starting to get the big head a little bit, not too big. And I graduate from broadcasting school. I graduate from my little treatment center that I'd been at for a year, and I have to go look for a job. So my buddy Carlton, back at the broadcasting school, I tell him that I'm going to go find a job. And he said, well, I found a job down in Savannah. I'm like, cool, dude. I'll see you when I see you. And I get a job in South Carolina. I'm not going to give the name of the town. And I go down to South Carolina not because of my great voice, but because this play-by-play guy that everybody knows calls the program director and recommends me. And the program director told me, well, if such and such recommends you, I'm hiring you. It's not how good you are, based on who you know. So I go down there and I start working for a while. I didn't know that part of my job was installing satellite dishes. Well, I didn't sign up for that. So I leave there and I decide I'm going to find a job somewhere else. What does this have to do with Swampmuscle? We'll just keep listening. I go out to the Midwest to interview for a job in Nebraska. I didn't get that job. On the way back in Iowa, I heard a station. And I call them, and I call them a bunch of times, and I finally end up going to interview with them. I tell the big guy and the play-by-play guy I'm trying to get a job out there. Well, he calls the Iowa radio station, and I end up getting the job, not because of my great voice, but because this play-by-play guy called them. So I work out in Iowa for a while, doing okay. I don't really like it out there. It's just totally different than the South. And one day I'm watching the Masters on TV, and outside there's like a foot of snow, and it's sleeting and raining, and it's just nasty. And I'm looking at the TV, and the flowers at Augusta are blooming, and people are in shorts, and it looks warm, beautiful sunshine. And I'm like, man, this sucks. My life sucks. And then that night, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil comes on. And that's a movie that takes place in Savannah, Georgia, when Kevin Spacey could act. And I look at that movie and I'm like, that's where I want to live. And by the way, that's where my buddy Carlton is. And I call Carlton that night. It's like, dude, you think we can get our show going? He's like, I don't know, I'll try. And I'm like, cool, I'm moving down there. He's like, all right. So I called my dad. It's like, hey, Dad, I'm moving down to Savannah. He's like, okay. So I leave the job in Iowa and burn the bridge with the play-by-play guy. Like, I ain't calling no more. You can't make up your damn mind what you want to do. And he was right. I go down to Savannah, move in down there, start working on this show, producing the show. Well, during that time, we had a segment of the show where it was like celebrity wrestling, and my buddy Carlton would do the impersonations, and he's like, we got to come up with some names for some other wrestlers. Well, I was driving in Savannah toward Tybee Island, and it was a real swampy looking area. and something just popped in my head, the name Swampmuscle. I don't know how it popped in my head. And so I came up with that name. It was one of our characters. I said, how do you like this name? He's like, it's great. Well, we go meet with the program director in Savannah, and he's like, guys, I think this show's great, but it's way too edgy for Savannah. It won't work. And I was like, well, this sucks. Well, I had to get a job down there, so I worked at golf club at Savannah Harbor. Nice golf course right across the street from downtown Savannah. Man, I love Savannah. And one night I was driving around in the cart picking up the flags after everybody quit playing. It was a beautiful night, and the space shuttle had taken off. And you could see the space shuttle, just the glow of the shuttle up in the air that had taken off from Cape Canaveral. And it just hit me, why don't you call your music that you make Swampmuscle? And so I called my friends back home. I was like, do you think I should change my band name, which had changed every other week, to Swampmuscle? And everybody said yes. Change it to Swampmuscle. So that night I decided, and this was back in 2001, or 2000, that I was going to change my name to Swampmuscle. You know, it taught me that everything's connected, and there's good connections and bad connections. And if I get on the wrong slope and start making a lot of my own decisions, without asking for help from other people, thinking changes to negative thinking because it's all fear. We ain't got time for that. And there's a lot of that going on now. You know, with the news and the media and all that. It's just basically all fear. And I can choose to get all caught up in that and think about things that I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Well, but I got to look at the lesson I learned about fear is that most things I've worried about never come true. So therefore, I've just wasted a bunch of time raising my blood pressure, being scared, thinking about stuff that'll never happen. Or I can think about stuff that's happened in the past where good things have happened and see how it's all connected and be like, you know what, I'm gonna be all right. Not of my doing. There's something else out there connecting all this stuff. Or maybe it's always been connected and I'm just on the right path. And that's one of the reasons I like pipe smoking, because it gives me time to reflect on positive things, not on negative things. I can look back at mistakes I make, and at one point they were negative, but now they're positive because I learned from those. Not because of something I did. Bad things, I just quit thinking about it and asked somebody. It's like, dude, I can't handle this. What do I do? And if you're around good people, they'll tell you good things. Just do what they did. And then somebody else down the line will say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I'll be like, yeah, I was struggling with that. But I talked to this guy and he taught me how to do it so I wouldn't struggle. And I'm just going to share that with you. And it just keeps going on down the line. Hanging around good people, bring about good thoughts. So Swampmuscle to me is a positive. The music's hopefully positive. Music's not about me. There's an ant.